would like to invite our first guest speakers for this morning, Dr. Michele Fazio, Jessica Muniz, from the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, USA, speaking about teaching across border, promoting Migrant Farmworker, justice in the service learning classroom. So because we already have the video presentation, so our team will play the presentation video. So thank you so much.
Thank you for attending our talk today. My name is Dr. Michele Fazio, and I teach courses on working class studies and contemporary literature. I connect the study of ethnicity, immigration, and class with community activism, particularly to value the lived experiences of workers. I'd like to begin by describing where my campus is located. We're in the southeastern region of the United States. And to give you a sense, we're directly between New York and the state of Florida. North Carolina has a particularly high farm worker population. We have over 150,000 seasonal farm workers that come to labor on each year on crops such as corn and sweet potatoes, which bring in more than $1 billion in sales to North Carolina's economy. Yet, as part of America's workforce, migrant farm workers are largely invisible to the public. They work extremely long hours in the fields, paid the lowest wages in the nation, have the fewest employee benefits, suffer from hazardous work-related injuries due to pesticides, and have limited access to health care. Given that my campus is surrounded by farms that employ migrant farm workers, such as the one you see in the photo here, I wanted to address these issues in the classroom, to invite my students to think more critically about how their ongoing challenges impact all of us, individually and collectively. So I began collaborating with my colleague, Dr. Brooke Kelly, professor of sociology, to design a new interdisciplinary course exploring food inequality and injustice. We asked our students to consider social problems such as food insecurity and health issues related to the production and consumption of food. In other words, to examine our relationship to the global food system. They read The Human Cost of Food, Farm Workers' Lives, Labor, and Advocacy, and this textbook provided an in-depth study about the dangers of working in the fields, raising concerns over immigration policies, environmental farming, and exposure to pesticides. The second aspect of the course examined contemporary American literature that addressed the subject of migrant farm workers. We studied Studs Terkel's Working, a graphic adaptation, which tells the story of Roberto Acuna, a young migrant farm worker who struggled against prejudice at school and later became a labor activist organizing workers in the fields. We also read Mexican-American poetry by Jimmy Santiago Baca and Pat Mora, and listened to songs by American songwriter Bruce Springsteen. Some of these songs are on his album The Ghost of Tom Joad. We also read All They Will Call You, a nonfiction story about the 28 deported Mexican farm workers who died in a plane crash in January 1948. These stories were recovered by the author Tim Hernandez, and he connected their stories to the victims' families. So together, these readings really broadened students' understanding of ethnicity and class, really asking them to see what has changed or how little things have changed since this time period. The final component of the course brought together sociology and literature with social activism, asking students to develop research projects to increase awareness of migrant farm worker justice and provide a service to this particular population. This gave students the opportunity to cross the border from campus into the real world, to address larger conversations about immigration, inequality, social justice, and labor activism. More importantly, it required them to engage in meaningful community service to enrich their learning experience, to teach them civic responsibility and how to strengthen community relationships. So a word about service learning. Service learning to me is much more than volunteering just a few hours a week. It's about sustaining a long-term relationship with a particular community partner. So we worked with Student Action with Farm Workers. It's a local advocacy group that really tried to brings together students and farm workers to improve farm worker living conditions. So we were able to integrate community outreach and social justice by partnering with them with the goal of recognizing how rural migrant farm workers are a driving force of North Carolina's economy. And this is where mentoring occurred. You know, my colleague and I worked to give up our own authority in the classroom to enable the students to grow, to take risks in the classroom, to develop new skills, and to discover how they could begin organizing social justice events on and off campus. So they did so by providing a wide range of different service projects. One was promoting National Farm Worker Awareness Week. This is an annual event held at the end of each March, and it's held across the country. And it's a way to bring together a sustained awareness that week of all the different ways that migrant farm workers contribute to our lives. So my students held information sessions at the University Student Center. They had a drive to collect food, clothes, and other household items that the migrant farm workers need. They organized a film screening to raise awareness, and they also held a campus visit for farm worker youth to visit campus and attend college classes. And this really allowed the farm worker students to see what campus college life is all about. One of the activities that we did is we arranged for them to paint a mural to express their views and what farm work means to them. So here are some images of us painting with the students, and this is the final project. So it was really just an interpretation of farming and how this defines their lives. So we also worked with the Episcopal Farmworker Ministry. It's another local nonprofit agency, and they helped coordinate a visit with a local labor camp, and we were able to share the food and supplies that we had gathered, as well as participate in social and cultural events like playing soccer and practicing yoga. My students and I wanted to really give them some health and mental wellness activities. So this is one way we were able to do that. These images are powerful examples of the kind of interactions my students had with migrant farm workers. It gave them real-world knowledge to apply to their research projects. It also encouraged them, we also encouraged them to present their final projects at professional conferences. So here are two examples. These two students focused on social media and how they developed a marketing campaign to promote National Farm Worker Awareness Week. Another student explored the possibility of creating a mobile health clinic to better serve migrant farm workers and their families at labor camps. So she was able to really create a way to apply this new knowledge with her major. So we were really excited to see how our students could connect what they were learning to their future careers. So overall, students witnessed firsthand the poor living and working conditions these workers faced every day. They learned more about social injustice than just having read a textbook alone. They developed grant writing and other professional writing skills, and they also participated in protest marches for worker justice. So to me, this kind of student engagement and involvement illustrates the power of mentoring. I'm a strong advocate of leading students by example. So I worked right alongside my students, making sure, though, to give them the space that they needed to be active participants in making change happen locally. So this kind of teaching and mentoring creates the most impactful learning experience. It increases students' understanding of cultural diversity. It gives them an opportunity to become a leader, and it fosters the practice of serving others. So earlier this year, my campus received a 3-year grant from the Andrew Mellon Foundation to sponsor a faculty mentoring program. And this has allowed me to work with Jessica Muniz, an undergraduate student who is currently developing a social justice exhibit on migrant farm workers. Jessica will now talk about how her experiences taking this course has helped shape her research.
So next, I would like to play another video from Jessica Muniz. So,
my name is Jessica Muniz, and I will be talking about my current research project regarding migrant farm workers and how it stems from my learning experiences in Dr. Fazio's class, and also how having Dr. Fazio as my mentor has helped me develop not only my research project, but other skills that I'll continue to use throughout my career. And so I was first exposed to this hidden world of migrant labor in 2019 when I took Dr. Fazio's class. In this class, I learned about the inequalities within the food system, and we mainly explored what these inequalities were for migrant laborers. And so in that course, I spent a lot of time reading literature and watching documentary films about the conditions on migrant camps. But something unique about the course is that we didn't just identify problems within the food system. We were also encouraged to take action to work towards the changes we wanted to make in order to attain justice for the injustices faced by migrant farm workers. And one of the most impactful parts of the course was being able to actually visit a migrant labor camp, which is what you're seeing in this image here. And this is where I got to see for myself what I had been learning about throughout the semester. And so during the course, we learned that a lot of housing for migrant laborers didn't have running water or effective electricity, or little to no access to health services. They didn't have much transportation opportunities or vehicles. And so this really isolated them into their communities and in a way alienated them from the outside world and vice versa. Here you're seeing me and my peers volunteering at the Episcopal Farmworker ministry, which we went in the same trip. And so my learning experiences in this course were so influential that when I was granted a research fellowship, I decided to center my research on migrant farm workers and to also have Dr. Fazio as my mentor. Here you can see the focus of my research project. I wanted to incorporate our current cultural moment during the pandemic and tie it back to what I learned in Dr. Fazio's class, and to see how things have changed over time. And so my research question is, has the COVID-19 pandemic increased or worsened human rights violations within North Carolina farm worker communities? And if so, how does this impact the livelihood of farm workers and American society? And so there are a couple aspects to this question. I focus on the micro and the macro aspects. So up close, I'm looking to compare the health, working conditions, living conditions, wages, and wages of farm workers from the pre-COVID era to our current moment during the pandemic. At the micro level, I'm looking to understand the changes or lack of change in the community and immigration. I'll also be analyzing the effectiveness of COVID-19 safety policies and guidelines at the federal and state level on farms. And so much of my information has and will be gathered from online repositories. These are some of the major ones I've been exploring, but I also have been keeping up with local news stories that have been documenting some of the struggles that migrant farm workers have been facing during this pandemic. This here is a portion of my upcoming timeline for my project. However, I've been working on this project for some months now. Part of my ultimate goal is to create a physical and virtual social justice exhibit that will showcase my findings regarding what has changed for migrant farm workers during the pandemic, and also inform the public about what they could do to help aid some of the issues that they're facing. And so this upcoming, I'll be constructing and designing the exhibit panels. I'll be developing the online version, and of course, just showcasing my exhibit. And so ultimately, my overall goal of my exhibit is to broaden awareness about human rights violations within North Carolina farmworker communities. My exhibit will ensure that I'm engaging not only scholarly communities, but also the general public by showcasing it in accessible spaces. Throughout my research project, it has helped me immensely to have the background knowledge I gained in Dr. Fazio's service learning course, as well as her guidance. Navigating archives and communicating with archivists, gaining permission from photographers to use their images, these were all new skills to me, and I've been privileged with access to Dr. Fazio's help. I've been using this research opportunity as preparation for graduate school, and also just a way to explore how to make research count, by not only identifying problems in our world, but also advocating for change and justice where it's needed. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation from Dr. Michele Fazio and Jessica Muniz on the topic about teaching across border, promoting migrant farm worker justice in the service learning classroom. So next, let's move to the question and answer sections. So anyone, if you have any question, please drop it in the chat box here. Well, now I got one first question. It's from Ms. Putwi, and the question is, what are the key milestones of the starting the service learnings in your journey? In your journey.
I'll start, and Jessica, I hope you chime in. I think the reason why I started service learning projects is because I think what our students think matters, and I want them to be active participants in the world that they live in. So if they start to connect like work history of migrant farm workers to the kind of food that they eat every day and understand who's touched their food, they can begin to actually ask questions about what are those relations with labor, what are the social and political issues at play. And when we think about Trump's border wall, and we think about the internment of migrant farm worker children or migrant children, this became a real political issue. And I think that's the challenge of any educator, is to ask our students these difficult questions and know that they have a voice and a way to enter into the conversation to lead and become the next generation of thinkers and scholars and just being an active citizen.
Yes, and for me, taking a course like this was one of the few courses I've taken that have really balanced learning in the classroom with outside action, social action at that. And so it was nice to be able to learn about issues in our world and to actually go outside the classroom and try to remedy them in some way, and even just bring awareness to other people about these issues, especially related to migrant farm workers, because it's such a hidden issue, despite North Carolina being such a agricultural state.
I would add too that this is a global issue. This is not just something specific to the United States. And when you think about teaching our students to think about the world and not just their immediate, like, I live in North Carolina or I live in this particular region, everything that we do is interconnected. And I think this conference is a good example, right? Like I've been hearing some of the panels, and it just builds on how much our lives are intersecting and our philosophies of teaching and mentoring. So I just think it's really important that we put students, I think service learning is a way for me to put students at the center of this dialogue. And really it also employs our mission statement. We have a particular mission statement at our university that we want our students to serve the local region. And we have a very large rural farm community that surrounds our campus. And I wanted the farm students to see that they're a part of this too. So what does it mean to grow up as a farmer or to grow up in a farm community and understand who's now doing that labor that maybe used to employ your grandparents? So it really complicated race and class and region. These are big questions. They were difficult to, I've taught this class 3 times with my colleague, and it changes every semester, and we never know what the students are going to say or react to. But we do really try to connect it to current events. And Jessica's project, I think, is a really excellent example to see how COVID is complicating their lives even further. So what kind of information is getting to the labor camps? What kind of treatment are these migrant farm workers receiving? Are they benefiting from any policies that the government is putting out? So it's really about how are they alienated and isolated, but yet they're feeding the world. Without them, we wouldn't have a food source. So I just remind my students, not all food comes out of a vending machine. There are hands that have touched the food, so if we trace back the tomato or the strawberries, we understand that there's a larger issue here that deserves our attention. So the question about Cambodia, I wonder if you could have students just think about who's coming into Cambodia and where are Cambodians going? Like, are they leaving to find work? And this is really a labor issue. So immigration and migration is political. It's tied up with nationalism, but it's also about people leave countries to go work and to feed their families. So this made this a very universal issue, but it also humanizes these migrants. So they're not massed to get put together in this big group of people that are exploited or looked upon unfavorably for coming into our country, not speaking our language. I mean, I just think if you think of any country, the diaspora of migrant workers is happening everywhere. So I think it's a challenge for all of us to think how we could bring this social issue into the classroom, not to demonize, but to really question what's happening and how does that relate to our future. How is it a human rights issue like Jessica is raising? And just really think about our own relationships and how we may be coming from a place of privilege, and to understand what that privilege looks like. I don't know if that answered the question, but I think this is much larger than the United States. So I think it's a challenge for all of us to think what our countries are doing and who's coming in to do that kind of work. And this is just migrant farm workers. I mean, if you think of all the jobs, the service jobs, the service sectors, it's a very complicated issue. And I think it's easier to ignore it.
Thank you.
And it should make us uncomfortable.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor, for presenting on such an interesting topic. So we would like to say thank you so much for your, we really appreciate your time for you joining us today. So thank you so much.